Welcome to the channel. Today's video will be discussing the unfolding Eugenia Cooney situation from the perspective of a healthcare professional. Having said that, these are all my personal opinions. This is not my professional advice or professional opinions. I will be moving forward in this video under the assumption that Eugenia does have an eating disorder, and that is based off of statements that she herself has made in the past. I have tried to include so many different talking points in this video that if it does turn out later she comes out and says that she had some other medical issue or there was something else going on with her, the talking points in this video can be applied to mental health in general. And so I still think it's good information for people to have. Just as a blueprint moving forward, because I did try to add so much information to this video, I just want you to know what I'll be covering. To start off with, it will be the TMZ article that was recently released. And I want to examine particularly what a police sergeant said, because I think there's some kind of problematic statements that he made. So I'm going to look at that. I want to just go over a little bit of the dark history of healthcare in this country. And I just think it's important to have a little bit of an understanding of that so that you can understand why the involuntary commitment process became such a highly regulated legal process. So I think maybe that'll be helpful in clarifying some confusion about why it's so difficult to get Eugenia Cooney involuntarily committed. Not that I'm saying that I think she should be. I just want to provide a little bit more information that I don't think is being talked about. After that, I kind of give my 2 cents about various different talking points, including like YouTube's responsibility in all of this and whether or not children should be watching this kind of content. Just keep in mind, those are my 2 cents. They're talking points. Take it with a grain of salt. And please, if you disagree with me or you have other points that you feel need to be made or you think I got something wrong, please add that to the comment sections below so that we can have an open discussion about it. And towards the end of this video, I did add an update about some recent Jeffree Star and Rich Lux videos that have been coming out. And I kind of just add my 2 cents about that, about whether it's good for Eugenia or it's exploitive, and just, you know, in general, how people are relating to her. So those are the various different talking points. For right now, let's go ahead and jump into that TMZ article. Okay, if you're looking this up yourself, it's titled from TMZ, YouTuber Eugenia Cooney, cops flooded with calls over skinny and frail appearance. Okay, the portion of this article I want to go over is, okay, basically it's saying that they talked to a Greenwich police sergeant named Brent Reeves. And he said that, you know, they've been getting calls from all over the world with concern about Eugenia Cooney. He says the people who are calling in, you know, they want to just check and make sure if she's doing okay. And they aren't sure if she's being forced by her mom to make content and keep her appearance like this. And the sergeant denies that that is what's going on. So this is the part that I found this to be interesting. So I'm going to read from the article from this one. Sergeant Reeves says he's known Eugenia for more than a decade and they have a good relationship. They even have a special code. She puts a certain object in her videos so he knows everything is all right. If that object isn't there, however, he'll know to get her help. Okay, so I just find this questionable. I don't know if he just came up with this on his own with Eugenia, or there's like a treatment team involved and they decided that this was a good type of, this sounds like a safety plan to me. You know, just a way to keep someone safe if they're in crisis. But this is the thing, like if Eugenia wasn't in any danger or there wasn't anything wrong with her situation, like why would there be this need or this code that she has to put an object in her video so that the police officer knows she's okay? I mean, to me, that's almost like admitting they know something's wrong or that there is potential for danger in the situation. I don't know. I just found that questionable. And if that is what they're doing, I'm questioning, you know, if she does need a safety plan, is this the best way to go about it? Because I'm also wondering too, are they actually sitting there as the police department? I mean, they get paid for policing. So is part of one of their jobs to sit and keep tabs on Eugenia Cooney and all of her videos? Because now that they apparently do have this safety plan, what if she doesn't put the object in one of her videos? What if she's reaching out for help? And what if the police aren't watching the video? Like, to me, it seems like they're accepting an awful lot of responsibility by having this whole plan of her putting the object in the videos. And I'm also questioning, I don't know why the sergeant would have come forward and made this public knowledge. It seems like something that would have just been private. And I wonder how Eugenia feels about that. It's just some questions there. So, something else that I found concerning. Okay, so it goes on to say that the Sarge says Eugenia has always been skinny, adding they can't really make her eat more if she's at the size that makes her comfortable. He says she's of sound mind and always has a bubbly personality when he chats with her. So I take exception to a few things in here. If someone has an eating disorder and they don't want to have to be hospitalized, of course they're going to tell you that they're always skinny. Like, I don't really know what relevance that has at this point, because it's like when she's this thin, like the fact that she says she's always been skinny, it really doesn't come into play. And also, if he did look at the other videos, he would see that's not true. She's not this skinny in other videos. There are times when she does have some more weight on her. Even though I would argue, yes, that she has usually been like of a slender frame, but there's a difference between that and this unhealthy, emaciated figure that she has now, or appears to have. And also this part here where he says he's adding, they can't really make her eat more if she's at the size that makes her comfortable. I just think this was a really irresponsible statement to make, especially considering eating disorders. If you do get to the point, and I'll get to this in just a minute and go over some involuntary commitment criteria. If you do get to the point where you are not eating and you're malnourished due to your mental health condition and disability, then yes, they can absolutely involuntary commit you and make you eat. So this whole notion of just like, oh, well, you can't force somebody to eat. It's like, yeah, but you can't involuntarily commit them and make sure that they get the treatment that they need. Now, I'm not saying one way or another if that's what should or shouldn't happen in this situation. I'm honestly just in such a gray area with this. I don't, it's just hard to say. But I think this was a misguided statement. Him saying that she's of sound mind. So it is my understanding that police officers and doctors can initiate the involuntary commitment process, but there is this whole separate process for it, which I again will go over in just a second. I mean, it's a very legal process and for a very good reason, which I will get to. So yes, he is probably able to determine if she's of like sound mind, and he has probably had training for that because that is something that is within a police officer's power. Then the next statement he said, I feel is very problematic too. He says she's always had a bubbly personality when he chats with her. So, I'm just going to take exception to this because there are plenty of people for plenty of reasons who fake having a bubbly personality when they're going through extremely tragic circumstances. So I just think it's very misguided of him to kind of give this impression that if someone's coming off with a bubbly personality, no offense to Eugenia, it is what it is, but and they look that way, that they're fine just because they have a bubbly personality. I just feel like that was another really irresponsible statement to make. Having said that, and I am sorry, there's times in this where I'm going to get a little more upset than others. I'm sorry. I'm human. I'm very passionate about mental health. I'm very passionate about this topic. And sorry. So I probably will go back and forth between getting a little passionate about it and then just kind of reeling it in a little bit more. So I guess now it's a good time to reel it in a little bit more. Next thing I want to talk about is the involuntary commitment process. I just want to talk a little bit about that. Yes, I did just say that doctors and police officers do have that power to initiate the process. But I just want to explain a little bit that even as a healthcare professional myself, I'm not a doctor. So I can't just go ahead and initiate that process. As a regular mental health care professional, what I do is I assess patients, I observe patients, I gather evidence, I look at labs, I can take weight measurements, I can do BMIs, although some people have issues with BMIs even. There's lots of criteria that I would gather as evidence. And if I felt that a person needed to be involuntarily committed, I would call, in my state, this is what would happen. I would call my county delegate and They have county mental health delegates. I would present the information to them. I would say, this is my evidence. This is my criteria for wanting to involuntarily commit that person. And I would give the criteria to them. The delegate is the one who decides whether or not that person should be involuntarily committed, and, whether or not they can go through with that process. And they have their own trainings. This is a very legal process. And I think people don't really understand this is an extremely legal process because it has been so completely highly abused in the past. And, I am in the healthcare profession. There are some wonderful things that happen, but there is a very dark history when it comes to healthcare in America. Yeah, there's some great things. There's also some horrible things. As far as homosexuality, that was classified as a mental disorder. You could actually treat that with shock therapy and lobotomies and conversion therapy. There's that. When it comes to hysteria, that was something that was mostly associated with women. It was a blanket term for all kinds of anxiety, depression, just simply for rebellious women who just weren't happy with their house lives at home, who weren't happy with their husbands. They would be considered hysterical, and they could face some of the same treatments as homosexuals did. And also with them too, because they were women, because this is a male-dominated profession, a lot of times the males were of the opinion that, oh, maybe it's their reproductive organs that are causing these problems, so we'll just go ahead and take out their reproductive organs. And they gave them hysterectomies. So there's that. When it comes to Black people in America, there was a famous Tuskegee syphilis study where essentially there were 600 Black men, and I believe 400 of them had syphilis. Instead of treating them with a simple dose of penicillin, they just let these men go, and they let the syphilis just progress just because they wanted to see what would happen. Okay, so that was horrific. Another thing too, I just want to go ahead and pull up another article just real quick here and show you something. Okay, this is from the Congressional Research Service titled Involuntary Civil Commitment, 14th Amendment Due Process Protections from May 24th, 2023. Again, just to highlight kind of how bad it's been in the past. For example, in 1860, Miss Elizabeth Parsons Ware Packard was committed to a state mental hospital under an Illinois law that allowed married women to be civilly committed at the behest of their husbands without actual evidence of mental health issues. After she was released, she actually went to do a lot of mental health work and changed the laws in numerous states so that women could just no longer be involuntarily committed without any actual evidence. But that is actually something that has happened in the history of this country under healthcare. So that is why the legal profession is so heavily involved. That is why it is not hard to commit people, because if the right criteria is there, then yes, we do believe in getting those people that help. But there's a lot of training involved, and there's a lot of legal issues involved. So it's not just something that can easily be done, nor should it be. There should be evidence involved. And I do also want to say that if I, as a health professional, do initiate a involuntary commitment process on someone and I do call a delegate, I do have to either sign documentation or present to, I believe, the delegate, a crisis team, the psychiatric facility, or, go to the person's hearing. But I definitely have to attest to the fact that what I'm saying is true and accurate. And I mean, this is actually a process that can be used by the public as well, calling a mental health delegate. But you will have to present evidence, and you will have to make a statement that your statements are true and accurate, because you are legally liable for them. Because no one should be put in a situation where someone can just falsely make statements about them to try to get them involuntarily committed as some kind of revenge. Okay, having said that, now I want to get into the actual involuntary commitment criteria. So for that, I'm going to go over the two parts. There's, some stipulations with this, but I'm just going to say basically, so one, you can be homicidal and have the intent to harm someone. You can be suicidal and have the intent to harm yourself. Or three, and this is what we're going to be focusing on today, is that you can be somebody who has a mental health disorder such that you are unable to care for yourself, to give like the basic essential needs for yourself, like food, shelter, clothing, feeding yourself. So those are the criteria that can get somebody involuntarily committed. Then there's also stipulations in different states. It's different in different states, like what the criteria can be. So I just want to show you in 2 different states that Eugenia is both associated with. There are some clauses and some differences where in some states it definitely looks like Eugenia would qualify for an involuntary commitment, and in another state it looks like there's a stipulation where she probably would not qualify for an involuntary commitment. So let me just go ahead and show you this. Okay, here we are. This is mentalillnesspolicy.org. You can go there to look this up yourself. I'm looking up the 2 different states, Connecticut and California, which I believe Eugenia Cooney has both been associated with. So just to read something from the Connecticut laws for involuntary commitment, gravely disabled means that a person as a result of mental or emotional impairment is in danger of serious harm as a result of inability or failure to provide for their own basic human needs, such as essential food, clothing, shelter, or safety, and that hospital treatment is necessary and available, and that such person is mentally incapable of determining whether or not to accept such treatment because his judgment is impaired by their psychiatric disabilities. Okay, so looking at just what I've seen from like Connecticut, it does look like Eugenia could potentially qualify for an involuntary commitment if the evidence was there. I believe what the main problem is that there's no actual evidence. Okay, the only evidence is these videos, and this is a legal process. I'm not sure that just visually looking at someone and having a video is legally considered enough evidence to attempt to get somebody involuntarily committed. I mean, think this is a process of taking her rights away from her and giving her rights to a facility or an agency, giving her rights away and her care and her treatment. You're giving that to somebody else. So I do not know if that can be determined alone by simply videos. And as far as other statements that could be made, I do understand that I believe she had some friends in the past who came forward who tried to make statements saying that she felt she was in danger. Those friends are no longer in the picture from what I understand, and those statements now have been made years ago. So I do not believe that they would apply because, time has passed, things are different now. And I'm pretty sure by now, I think the situation is that her family is supportive of her. Her mother is saying, I think in different videos, that she is eating. So if that's their stance and those are the people that are closer to her, again, you wouldn't have criteria, especially if crisis teams are showing up to Eugenia's house. If she's saying she's eating and her family is saying she's eating, then it would really come down to some type of, I'm not sure if it would be like a healthcare professional would have to say, based off of evidence that they have in the past, based off of research that's been done, based off of their experience with people working with eating disorders, that they can easily say that this person is suffering from an eating disorder just based off visually looking at her. And I don't think any healthcare professional is going to do that. I just don't think they would, because there's also an issue now that maybe she had an eating disorder in the past, but maybe she has some other disorder right now. Like maybe she has a metabolic disorder. Maybe she has cancer. Maybe there's something else going on with her that she's not able to be involuntarily committed. If the only evidence you have is videos, I don't think that would apply. But also, so more than that, let's take a look at California. In California law, it looks like there's this stipulation that it says a person is not gravely disabled if that person can survive safely without involuntary detention with the help of responsible family, friends, or others who are both willing and able to provide for the person's basic needs for food, clothing, or shelter. So there in California, it's basically saying if there's somebody else there who's willing to put, it later says in writing that they're going to be responsible for this person, or say that Eugenia's family has, written something to the officials or, to mental health professionals, to the crisis teams, they put something in writing saying that they are the ones being responsible for her care and they are caring for her. Then I really don't know what they would be able to do, because like here in California, it doesn't look like she would qualify for an involuntary commitment. I'm not a lawyer. I mean, the legal YouTubers could come and weigh in on this and give us a little more clarity. But from what this says, if she was in California, they wouldn't be able to involuntarily commit her. In Connecticut, it seems like there would be a chance, but like, again, it just doesn't seem like there's enough evidence. I do want to touch upon the fact that you always want to encourage people and provide them chances to get treatment on their own and voluntary treatment. Because even if someone's involuntarily committed, just because someone has a mental health issue doesn't mean that they're a fool. A lot of people realize all they have to do is follow along with the treatment program. All they have to do is take their medications, or they have to eat the food, or they have to go to the groups. They have to follow along with the guidelines of wherever they're at. And if they do that long enough, basically they have no reason to hold them anymore, and they have to let them go. So a lot of people just do what they need to do in order to get out of the facility, and then they go back to their old life and they continue to have their same bad behaviors. And you can end up on this vicious cycle. And that's why there are some people who believe that you should never involuntarily commit someone, that people should always voluntarily want to go into treatment. There are people who do present that argument, even if it was to save the person's life. A lot of people say that you're just going to end up in a vicious cycle. So unless the person actually wants the treatment themselves, it's not going to produce the result that you want. You do have to consider the other aspect of it too. Even if this person wanted to go into treatment and was truly interested in changing their life, you have to consider the fact that once they are released from the facility, where are they going to go? They are most likely going to go back to their family. They're going to go back to the same situation that they came from. So unless her family chose to go into therapy too, and unless they all explored together their family dynamics and tried to change that to understand, how this situation was able to happen in the first place, unless that happens, a lot of times people go back into the same situation where they came from, and they can fall into the same bad behaviors, even if they do want treatment. And that's especially true even if people are involuntarily committed, because they're involuntarily committed, they don't want to be there, and then they go back to their same environments. So it is a very complex issue. Another thing that people should consider is that a lot of times, if people are involuntarily committed, or when people are in psychiatric facilities, their highest rate of relapse or even suicide is when they get out of the facility. That's a very vulnerable time for people. So that's also something to be considered, because a lot of times being involuntarily committed can be detrimental to someone's mental health, and sometimes that has consequences that are unintended. So those things need to be considered too. And I can say in my personal life, because I'm open about mental health, because I've studied it, I do have a lot of friends who've told me stories. I've had, friends who were involuntarily committed a long time ago, and they got out, they got the help that they needed, and they kind of never looked back, and they never really even talk about it again. They just kind of moved on with their lives. I know someone who was involuntarily committed by their treatment team, and basically the result of that was that when they got out of their involuntary hold, they quit going to therapy, and they quit really talking to their doctors about the symptoms and issues that they were having. And that's also a strange situation, because a lot of people don't like taking psychiatric medications, but this person doesn't have an issue with that, but they're probably never going to get on the correct medications or the correct dosages, because they're not communicating with their doctor anymore on what their issues are, because they feel like that trust was broken. So that's a very serious thing to consider. I also know someone who was involuntarily committed probably, I think 4 times. And it took that many times in order for them and their family to get treatment, and in order for that person to get help. But to this day, this person is a productive member of society. They're doing well. They continue to work on their mental health issues, as most people do. And they're doing very well. So there's some pros and cons, that you need to consider with involuntary commitments. Also, another thing too, there's a lot of people who want to involuntarily commit this woman, but some of the language that you're using just kind of doesn't seem like you've done any actual research on eating disorders. You're so gung-ho about getting her involuntarily committed, but to me, it doesn't seem like you've done a lot of research. For instance, there are people trying to get her involuntarily committed who are continually calling her a girl. Okay. She is a grown woman. She's 29 years old. And do you even understand the fact that in her mind, she may be trying to get the body of a prepubescent little girl? And so when you actually call her a girl, you're reinforcing to her eating disorder that, like, yes, you're doing the right thing. People are viewing you as a little girl, and that's what I want. That's the image that I want to project. That's the body that I want to have. That's damaging. She's a woman. Call her a woman. Also, it's bothering me that a lot of people keep calling her sweet. So here's a question for you too. So what, if she was a bitch, you just wouldn't care what happened to her? What does her being sweet or her personality have anything to do with her eating disorder? Okay, people with mental health issues present with a lot of symptoms, and sometimes they're not always pleasant. They can be angry, they can call you names, they can be extremely irritable. Does that mean that they don't deserve help? The fact that she's sweet has nothing to do with it. Also, think about it. So a lot of times people are sweet or they come off nice and everyone thinks that's so great. But a lot of times it's because they have ineffective coping mechanisms. It's because they don't feel like they are able to express themselves. They don't feel like they're able to say no to people. They don't know how to do that. And so they come off as sweet basically because they don't know how to express themselves. And how does that manifest? You know, how does not expressing yourself manifest? It can manifest in an eating disorder. So quit calling her sweet. Again, like, you know, I don't know her particular case. That might not be feeding into it. Maybe that is her true personality, but that is a factor of eating disorders. So quit calling her sweet. If you want to say something nice about this woman, why isn't anybody mentioning the fact that I personally feel like she has great artistry? I think there's interior design skills there. I love the colors that she uses. I like some of the furniture that she uses. I like her clothing choices. She's very skilled at putting on makeup. She puts together these videos, which takes skill and preparation. Nobody's mentioning those things, but I honestly have no recommendations or opinions on how people should be interacting with this person on the platform at all at this point. I will say I do sympathize. I understand why people are so disturbed by the content. I myself, when I first saw one of the videos, I thought it was actually a Tim Burton inspired claymation. And then I actually realized that this skeleton that I saw dancing around was an actual person. And I was disturbed by that, especially because YouTube has been my escape for the past year. And I didn't want to see something that was so mental health related and so tragic. But as far as that goes, I mean, YouTube is a service. And again, these are just talking points in my opinion. YouTube is a service. Some people are paying for it. And you have every right to tell YouTube what you do when you don't want to see, or that you want to find ways to prevent content like that from coming into your algorithm. So you have, you know, every right to complain or make suggestions and recommendations. But if YouTube comes back and says that they aren't going to do anything, then it's up to you to decide whether you want to leave the platform or cancel your premium subscription. Another issue is people are concerned that children are watching this content and being influenced by it. I know the arguments being brought forward are that it's, you know, parents and adults' responsibility to monitor what children are watching, and that is not YouTube's responsibility. And then I know parents are coming back and saying, but it's impossible basically to monitor your children all the time. I don't know. Those are just talking points that have come up with that discussion. Also, people have brought up a lot that deplatforming this person would be essentially taking away her freedom of speech. And I'm just kind of questioning right now, are we at that place in society where we're equating social media to freedom of speech, you know, which is a constitutional right? Because just because you're not on YouTube doesn't mean that you're not free to go to other platforms or to go to the newspaper. But, you know, it is worth considering, is social media is so prevalent now and so important that people are equating it to a type of freedom of speech. So that's another talking point to consider. Another thing that I think is worth thinking about is what it is about this particular person that's calling so many people to action and to try to deplatform her or to try to involuntarily commit her. I do think it's worth asking, is it because she's a woman that people feel that they can kind of take these rights away from her? easier maybe than other content creators? Does that play into it? I'm just asking. Is the fact that she's sweet kind of play into it, that she's not defending herself or being nasty, that you feel like it's easier to try to take things away from her? Again, these are just questions that I feel are worth asking. Uh, Another kind of question is, so if this was a male on the platform and say they were, addicted to heroin, which they can become just as skinny and just as sick, would we feel inclined to take the same actions against that person? Would it be easier to deplatform that person because substance abuse disorders are stigmatized more than some other disorders? So would it be easier to get that person off the platform? Or would you be inclined to try to get that person involuntarily committed? Or as a society, do we just kind of give up on people with substance abuse issues? I guess my question there is just to ask, like, is there more or less compassion for a person based on what mental health disorders that they do have? Do we treat some mental health disorders better or worse than others in this country? I feel like that's a question that's also worth asking. Another question too is, so something to consider is if we did deplatform this person, I'm just kind of wondering, like, what would the consequences of that be? Because it does seem like the eating disorder is feeding into the relationship that they do have to the internet. And if they were to get treatment, they would probably need a treatment team, honestly, that could deal with like the eating disorders, family dynamics, and how the person is associating, with social media and with the internet, and to work with her on all those aspects. But say you did deplatform her, um, I do believe that that's like her livelihood, and that's where she's getting her income. So she could no longer get income from social media, then wouldn't that force her to get income from her family? And so many people are having issues with her family and the interactions there, but to deplatform her would be giving her family more control over her. And control is hugely associated with eating disorders and how like control plays into that. But then too, you're sending her back into that family dynamic and you're giving them more control. And plus, it's like, what would taking social media away from her, what would that actually do to her mental health? Like, how devastating could that be for her? Or how much could that worsen her eating disorder? Or could it make her better? I don't know. It is so complicated. Like, I wouldn't even begin to be able to make any comments on any of that. But I just think, again, those are talking points which are worth considering. When it comes to that too, there are some other YouTubers on here who are making recommendations on how to support and things to say. What I would say to that is that clearly, even as a health professional myself, no, I don't specialize in eating disorders, but even if I did, I think this case is so complex that I wouldn't be making recommendations to people on how to interact with this person. No, you don't need to be making negative comments to them. And I know that a lot of people feel that it's okay to do that because they feel that she's promoting eating disorders. But what I would say to that is I don't think we really know what she's promoting or not promoting at this point. I think at this point she's just somebody who is sick with an eating disorder, even though just the imagery of herself might be influencing other people. I don't know that she herself, I don't know that that's like an intention of hers. I think she's just someone with an eating disorder right now who is behaving exactly how someone with an eating disorder behaves. So all I would say to that is just that, yes, please, like, don't take your recommendations on this situation from a fellow YouTuber. I want to go ahead and add an update here based off of recent videos and events involving Eugenia Cooney and other YouTubers. I just want to kind of explore exploitation versus support versus enabling. And again, I would just want to go ahead and say that these are all my personal opinions, not my professional opinions, because this is so nuanced that I just really wouldn't even be able to give a professional opinion on this if I wanted to. As far as exploitation, I do see why people are questioning if Jeffree Star is exploiting her. She just visited him. They did put up a lot of YouTube videos about it. She is, being highly viewed on YouTube right now, and she's like a major, like, hot topic that people are talking about. So she is getting a lot of views. He also has like a store opening right now. So he invited her right at the time when his store is opening. So I know a lot of people are questioning that. Now, in defense of that, I guess Jeffree Star has come out and said that he's known Eugenia for 15 years. Just want to point out, if that is the case, then he knew her when she was 15 years old. And again, we've seen time and time again, especially recently on YouTube, where adults are having inappropriate relationships with minors. So again, it's just another reminder to adult YouTubers out there that you need to stay away from minors. It's not appropriate at all. It's not okay. But, there's other YouTubers who have come out and said that even Eugenia herself said that she didn't really know Jeffree Star. And that was just like a couple of years ago. People are playing clips. I don't know, what the truth is. But as far as like the current situation, there is one clip that recently came out where I can say that potentially he is a support system for her. I'm going to go ahead and play this clip for you.
My advice would be to be kinder so my friend can heal quicker. That's a big statement. I'm not going to really expand on that, so take it how you will. But I know if I went online every day, everyone was telling me I can't say half the things they say at work because I'll get my account deleted. I wouldn't feel good about myself. So I can't imagine going online every day and seeing the most brutal, disgusting, hateful comments. So dehumanizing. I couldn't imagine turning off my phone and feeling great after.
Okay, so what I want to say with that clip, it's a little encouraging because in the beginning, he says, leave my friend alone so that she can heal quicker. And that does seem to be an acknowledgement that he's aware of the fact that something is wrong. He's not saying what it is, but she needs to heal from something. And that's, as far as acknowledging that there is something wrong with her, I mean, I haven't really seen anyone even come close to that. So potentially he is not delusional about the situation, and potentially he is just behind the scenes trying to help her. Maybe he's helping her in a misguided way, but maybe his intentions are still good. I'm not saying that he is being misguided, but again, this isn't my area of expertise. If I was him, I'd probably be consulting with professionals to try to figure out the best way that he could support her and encourage her into getting treatments. I'm not sure. But then, so within the same video, part of it that I do think is potentially exploitative is the fact that he is acknowledging the fact that when she's going on the internet, she is being met with these negative comments, and he's aware of that and she's aware of that. And it's my understanding that bullying is in her history. That may have been what helped to contribute to her having an eating disorder. And so, if that's true, then why would you continue to encourage her to make YouTube videos and to put herself out there on YouTube when you know that she's going to be getting negative comments that could be, feeding into this whole loop of like the eating disorder? So, that's the part where it's just like, I'm not sure if that's misguided or not. Now, I'm not trying to victim blame at all here and say that, because she's putting herself on YouTube, she deserves to get the hate that she gets. I don't think anybody should be making negative comments about her or saying bullying things or saying that she should be killing herself. That's completely out of line. At the same time, though, when it comes to people trying to involuntarily commit her because they're so concerned for her, I don't necessarily look at that as bullying because those people do seem genuinely concerned. So, this is where the situation gets so completely complex. I wouldn't even really begin to say whether Jeffree Star is being exploitative, if he's supporting her, if he's enabling her. That's the other thing. Because even if he is trying to support her in his own way, there's a fine line between supporting someone and enabling someone. So, I do hope that he's done his own research and that maybe he's reached out to his own professionals to guide him. This isn't something that just a layman should be trying to navigate by themselves. Even some people have speculated that he's had an eating disorder in the past. So maybe he's more of like a peer support to her. Even if that is the case, I think her situation has become relatively pretty serious to the extent that if he's putting himself out there to her as a support system in this instance, I hope that he is reaching out to professionals to get appropriate advice on how to be talking to her, appropriate language, comforting, therapeutic language, just ways that can help her instead of potentially enabling her. So I don't really can't really say what's going on with the Jeffree Star situation, but let's just hope that she has found a friend. Let's hope that she has someone who can help her lead to some treatment or to some healing. Let's hope that she has that. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about Rich Lux. So I have watched some of his content in the past and I have enjoyed it because I like drama channels. I like escaping my own drama in my own life in the drama commentaries. And so I have watched some of his videos in the past. I will say that he has had some recent videos that seem like nothing but clickbait to me. The titles of it just really seem like total clickbait. I clicked on them and then I've been just really kind of disgusted with what was in the videos. I think it comes off as desperate when you start doing that. I think he's damaging his own integrity at this point. I mean, as a viewer, if any YouTuber starts doing that and putting up clickbait, I'm like, okay, clearly your main motivation here is just views, and it's not the quality of your videos. It's not what you have to say in your videos. You're just blatantly attempting to get views. And that's just so completely disappointing. I hope he comes out and acknowledges what he's been doing. I hope he apologizes for it. Maybe potentially he can get some people to start going back to his channel and watching some of his videos again. But, at this point I've moved on with like other YouTube creators and I'm not sure that I would go back to him after this. I have seen clips too, where he had an interview with Eugenia Cooney. I'm not, I wouldn't have had even anything to say about that really, except for the fact that there's a portion of it where Eugenia, is pretending to like pass out, or she's just laying there for a while, or some people are saying like she was pretending to be dead, and Rich Lux makes a fake phone call to 911, which is blatantly like a fake phone call. But at the same time, you know how other YouTubers are, and people just take different excerpts of other people's videos. So if you took a certain clip of that video, it may have looked like Eugenia actually did pass out and he was trying to get her help. And I think it was like the shock value of that and the drama of that he was going for. And I just think that was pathetic and desperate, quite honestly. Having to call 911 and being in those types of situations and having someone pass out or potentially thinking somebody is dead is nothing to sit and joke about. And if that's how you're going to start to get your views, if that's what you think is funny or humor, then I don't need to watch you. And that's one where I don't like to throw stones, because plenty of people can throw stones about me, so I really don't like to throw them. But when it gets to the point where you're being that blatant about it, then I have no problem with it. I think everyone on YouTube can see that that's what's happening. Go back, look at the titles. If you think I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. But when you look at the titles of the videos, it's like blatant clickbait. I don't appreciate that as a viewer on anybody's channel. And the whole, like the situation, like the fake 911 call, I didn't find anything funny about that, especially as a healthcare professional. So I hope he comes out and apologizes. And at this point, I think salvages some of like his channel and his own reputation. As far as like, if anyone wants to say I'm being exploitative about, making a video about this, yeah, feel free to question that. Please always like question me, and what I will say about that is just that I have 10 years of experience working in healthcare, and I do take it very seriously. And these are topics that I talk about in my private life just as much as I do on a professional level. Also, in regards to exploitation, in regard to some of these interviews or documentaries that are taking place with Eugenia, I encourage people to kind of go back and look at some of those documentaries. Well, not that I'm encouraging giving them more views, because I'm not sure if they're just being exploitative or not. But one thing I would like people to consider is that in a lot of these interviews, the interviewers aren't even really looking at Eugenia whenever she's talking. I mean, there's one interview where they ask her a question, they talk to her for a little bit, and then they stare straight at the camera and basically ignore her and, kind of just go on their own little tangent. There's other interviews where people are looking at their iPhones or shuffling with their papers. And granted, maybe they're just looking for the next question, but it's still, they're not focusing on her. And even in the documentary that was about her, she didn't enter into that documentary until 21 minutes into it. The documentary that was about her, where she didn't enter into it for 21 minutes. So, I just wonder like what kind of messages those are sending to her when people are interviewing her and they're not even paying attention to her, especially when people generally have poor self-esteem whenever they have eating disorders. So that's just another thing to consider. Another thing that I wanted to say on this too is that I noticed I was saying if someone was released from an involuntary commitment, they could go back to their bad behaviors. I don't mean to stigmatize it as bad behaviors. What I meant to say is like people can go back to the same symptoms that they had before or the same patterns of behavior that they had before that can lead to devastating effects. I just kind of like wanted to make note of that. And also, again, like I said, I think there's a lot of talking points in this. As someone who's interested in mental health and legal issues, I do find this to be like a fascinating, like intellectual topic. But I will say too, like personally, that this is an actual human being, and I think that this case is and could potentially end up being like extremely tragic, but I do hope that this could end up being a great recovery story and that this person can get the help that they need. And I would hope that we can all continue to have open conversations about this, even if we don't agree. I think there's a lot of valid points to bring to this conversation. I was a little upset because a content creator that I do like talked about this topic, and she basically stated at the end, after she brought forth all these very valid points, at the end she kind of said, well, if you don't agree with me, then you probably shouldn't be watching my channel and you can go ahead and go. And I hope that she reconsiders that position, because I do think this is so complex that everyone can have very strong opinions on this and still not come to agreement. But there's still, points that we should all be considering. I do look forward to seeing what can happen with this case, and I hope that this person gets the treatment and the care that they need and that they do definitely deserve. And that concludes our video for today. If you would like to continue to discuss the topic, or if you feel like I need to make some corrections or you have additional information, please feel free to add that to the comments section below. For now, thanks for joining me, and I will see you next time.